So for my case presentation today, I was focusing on the Benjamin versus State case. Um, the main focus on this one again was facility and negligence, which affects the athletic department, and that's a huge part of many athletic departments. Is the fact that a lot of facilities, which is the premises in which a whole people use as athletes or come in as spectators, can face negligence for ill equipment, ill safety checks, and just assuming, which is the biggest issue you can do as a business, is assume people know and people are aware of it, because people are stupid. As the best way someone's ever quoted to me, people are stupid, don't ever assume. Never assume. Assume you're taking risk, and then you are negligible because you've assumed that they know, and people don't always know better. So the case that happened was Benjamin, who was an 11-year-old kid, went to an ice hockey game. He sat in the stands, not directly behind the goal, but he sat, to the side, and he was struck by a puck while sitting in the stands. So with that, the issue is that there was sitting in what was deemed a safety zone by the university. It was a safety zone, and he was technically behind a protected barrier, and so there should really have been no real plausible cause for him to get hit. But it didn't protect him, and so he was still hit. And so at that point, they were kind of like, well, it's meant to be a safety zone, we're meant to be protected, we've been hit, and like, it's not the same as you get hit by a soccer ball. Soccer ball's light, if it hits you, it's going to do little to no damage, unless it hits like a baby. But a puck is real hard, and so that, in ice hockey, and it's known for leaving the stadium at times. So that in itself creates a whole area of issues for them, because that is a safety hazard, a complete safety hazard. When if you get hit by that can cause serious injury, maiming, or death. So through the argument when they got hit, the plaintiff, 11-year-old Benjamin, argued that the area did not supply adequate protection. So when they looked at the stadium and the ring where they were sitting, there wasn't enough protection, even though it was meant to be a safety area and there was safety procedure and protection. There wasn't enough there to prevent it leaving the field to the court. Most of the protection, especially in mini ice hockey, is behind the goals, because that's where the pucks are being shot at, and so the frequently leaves the stadium. So they have nets and safety protection behind to prevent any of that happening. But what they lack and forget to do is protect the sides, where it comes across less frequently, but is still able to enter the stands and hit spectators. The defense in the university stated that they only had to protect the area behind the goal, which was a flawed logic in my opinion. To only protect the goal is just like, we're going to protect part of something and we're going to give you a part of the safety plan, but we're going to forget the rest. And I get it, for budgeting purposes, the school might not be adequately funded enough to fully protect it, but what they're facing now is a lawsuit, which they then had to pay so much more for, when if they just protected and just laid out the protective procedure, then they wouldn't have had to pay out the $24,000 that they ended up having to pay. Their logic was basically saying that they assumed that when people sat to the sides of the seating, that it wasn't in full protective positioning, and that they were under the assumption that they were aware that there was a potential risk of being hit. And the key words in this, assumed. As soon as you assume, you are wrong, because you are trying to guess what someone else is thinking or what someone already knows. And you can't, because people don't know everything. You assume people know nothing. That is the best way of protecting yourself, is assume that people know nothing and people are very stupid, that you then have to dumb it down and protect it all out, all the way from the bottom stage all the way up. And I'm not using the right language for this, but you have to dumb it down so that you can protect yourself by just assuming they know nothing, build it up and protect everything, put the correct signing up stating that if you sit here you're under the threat of being hit, taking care of yourself, because you can't assume that people know. If you assume people know something like this will happen, a freak accident for whatever reason, and now you're liable because you didn't give the adequate protection or adequate notion that there was the possibility of injury. Um, the displayed protective seating by where the kid was sitting they had seating that was basically protective, and so that assumed that they knew. So this basically sealed the deal for them under the assumption when they assumed it they were already wrong, and so basically the state university was found wrong, and they had to play the plaintiff and awarded him $24K for his injuries sitting there. So that was a real controversial subject, but for me it was pretty straightforward. They assumed, and you can't ever assume. If you assume, you're wrong no matter what. Because if you assume that someone won't sit or do something, they will. And when they do, you haven't taken enough care to protect them, you are now liable. So it is just, there is no gray area, you just cannot assume. That is my opinion on it.